Here she is. Hey, Emily.
Hello, hello. How's it going?
Great. How are you? Ready to preview a really great college volleyball season? I think we've got a good one in store.
Oh, it's going to be so fun. I feel like even just the last few weeks seeing every team posting about preseason and scrimmages, it's like let's get the ball rolling here.
I know. So I want to start with top teams. We're just going to dive right into it. We'll talk national championship contenders. So to me, Emily, the most complete team is Stanford. I just think they have one of the best setters in the country in Cami Minor, arguably the best setter. And then you've got a talent like Kendall Kipp returning their entire lineup. They almost made it to the national semifinals last year. That was a 5-set upset to San Diego, I believe. But what do you think? Is that the top team for you? And then if not, who challenges them?
Stanford's definitely the top team for me. I would say, there are a few that I think will definitely contend, but at this point in the season coming in, there's no question marks for this team. And that's so important, especially early on with the schedule that Stanford has. I mean, they're playing, so many teams in the top 15, three in the top five just in non-conference play. When you have the team that they have with the experience, you bring back every single starter. And you mentioned setter Cami Minor. I agree. The best setter in the country right now, still really young, but her ceiling is absolutely so high. I think Kendall Kipp is definitely in contention and probably would be my pick right now to win National Player of the Year. So when you throw those pieces together, plus two outstanding middles and two incredible outsides, along with their libero, I mean, this team is the most complete team. But it'll be interesting to see what they do during non-conference play with all these massive matchups that we're going to see, because they're
Yeah.
going to find out really early how good they are.
Oh yeah, I feel like it's going to be one of those teams where it's like they might have a few losses in the beginning, but they're going to be battle tested. He always schedules them so hard, so I'm really excited. Who do you think, besides them is the biggest challenge? So we look at Wisconsin, they're the number 2 team in the country. They do have Sarah Franklin announced that she will be playing, and then Temi Thomas Aguilera. They've got most pieces. I think the biggest question mark is at setter there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, headed into this weekend and talking with Kelly Sheffield, I have their games coming up. He's so excited about this team because headed into last year, there were so many question marks of, okay, we have a really young team. We lost all of these All-Americans. What are we going to do? And essentially, they brought back a lot of really great players. The real only starter I would say that they lost right now is Danielle Hart, who, of course, was an incredible middle, but you bring in Carter Booth from Minnesota. I mean, she finished top in the country, top 5, top 10 in terms of blocks per set, hit percentage. And that was just her freshman season. So, you take Danielle Hart out, you bring Carter Booth in, and on the outside, you get a little more firepower with outside Temi Thomas Ilara coming in from
Oh yeah.
Northwestern, one of the most powerful hitters that you will see in all of the NCAA. And having Sarah Franklin back is so big, completely cleared to play. And talking with Kelly Sheffield this week, he said she looks even better than she did before, which,
You're
you know,
kidding.
if you're told months ago that you probably might not be able to play the sport ever again, and then weeks, months later, you're now at the top of your game, getting better than you looked before. It's going to be scary what this team can do, especially they will be in that 6-2. They did it during scrimmages. So that just adds another layer of firepower. You're going to see two opposites. You have Devin Robinson, not only great from an offensive standpoint, but defensively averaging over a block per set. An absolute she's, I think, one of the best opposites in the country. And then you put in 6'9" Anna Smrek, no one's getting around that too.
Yeah, I mean they just have endless pieces. I mean, you even have Julia Orgel. You don't even know how she's
Yeah.
going to fit into that rotation. Okay, so I think Wisconsin's probably the biggest threat right now
Yeah.
to Stanford as a complete team, especially once they get going. Texas loses Logan Eggleston. You bring back Asia O'Neal,
Mhm.
Skinner, Molly Phillips, Akana, and then you bring in Jenna Wennis. Obviously, that doesn't replace Eggleston, but how do you think they fit in? Obviously, number 1 team. You're comfortable saying that preseason, but
Yeah.
how do they actually perform? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think, the big question mark is what does this team look like without Logan Eccleston and without Zoe Fleck, who carried that team
Right.
last season defensively? That was the one thing that Texas hadn't been able to find over the last, yeah, I would say maybe even 10 years or so, was that just top notch rock star libero. And Zoe Fleck was that for them. She led the serve receive, did so well. Same with Logan Eccleston. But Of course, a Jenna Wennis doesn't necessarily replace a Logan Eggleston. However, what she brings is consistency. She's a player that doesn't make a lot of errors. She's a fantastic passer. So you're good on that front. I don't know how, in terms of being terminal, no one compares to Logan Eggleston. However, she's a great plug and play player where if you put her in, she, maybe isn't going to score the most points, but she's always going to keep the ball in play. And then you have an Asia O'Neal, Molly Phillips, and just Maddie Skinner, that players that are going to be terminal. So I think you have that ball control piece, especially with a back row player like Kayla Akana. I mean, she is one of the best in the country, probably could have been libero at any other school except Texas, aside from a few, but I think they do have the pieces, but I think it's more of a question mark of how are they going to look through these first few games, and are they really connected in that sense, like we saw they were last year?
Yeah, and I'm excited. They've got some good matchups right out of the gates as well. They've got Stanford, which we'll do some predictions later. I want to talk about Louisville next. So I went on a campus visit to Louisville. I got to watch their practice. A big question mark with losing Claire Chaussee, losing Amaya Tillman, but I'm telling you, Charity Looper was in there, and it was giving me just not Claire Chaussee flashbacks, but it was very similar. She's an undersized outside. I went up to Danny and I was like, how much, is Charity going to be in there? And she was just like, oh, she's in there. Like
Always.
she's she's in there always. She's going to be in their sixth rotation. She's our girl. So I'm very excited to see how she kind of replaces that spot, because they lost Nina and Banu too. You'll have Anna DeBeer back at full strength. She was looking outstanding in there. And then you've got Aiko Jones again. And then, they had Ellen as a setter. She looked really good. So I was excited to see Louisville. I think that they're going to be a lot more reloaded than maybe people thought they were.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that lost some pretty big pieces, but you mentioned Charity Looper. I mean, I think she has the potential to be one of the best outsides in the country. But the biggest question mark for her is she able to stay healthy? She's dealt with injuries throughout her career, but when she is on the court, she's an absolute baller. She can put a ball down. She can hit all the shots. Her passing is outstanding. So from a defensive standpoint, I think they're in a good spot. You have Elena Scott back. Anna DeBeer, we've seen as an incredible passer. Even when she's getting targeted, she's able to forget the last one and just step in and play. So again, it's not a complete replacement from Claire Chaussee, but I do think Charity Looper has the potential to be one of the best outsides if she can just stay in the whole time.
Agreed. Let's talk about Nebraska next. So this team, we've talked about Nebraska before. They always, find a way. Freshmen this year, you've got Harper Murray. You've got the battle for the setter position with Bergen Riley and Kennedy Orr. You've been around Nebraska. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, this is one of the youngest Nebraska teams we've seen in a really long time. And I think that does two things. So first of all, this team has no seniors. So, they lost a lot of firepower in that sense. You lose someone like Maddie Kubik, that's tough. You lose a really great leader and setter, Nicklin Hames. But I think when you're young, sometimes it can help you out because you have these hitters, especially coming in, and like, they don't know what they don't know. They're going to just take all out swings because they want to see what works. A lot of times we'll see freshmen, of course, making freshman mistakes, hitting into the net out of bounds, but they're also still learning. They're figuring out what shot works. And if I know anything about Coach Cook, he's going to tell them just hit lights out, figure out what works. At times, I'm sure he's telling them like, you're not even allowed to tip the ball. So I'm excited to see what some of these freshmen do, especially Harper Murray. I mean, she's going to be absolutely outstanding. The biggest question mark to me is what do they do with those other pins? You have Lindsay Krause, Allie Batenhorst stepping in there, I think, fighting for that second outside position. But then you get Merritt Beeson from Florida, one of the best opposites in the country, and stepping in, coming in January, being named a captain. It already tells you how great of a leader she is. And that's the one piece that I was worried about with Nebraska is who's going to step in and really lead this squad. And, it doesn't always have to be a senior, a fifth year, whatever. It could be someone coming in right away that just is not afraid to use their voice, that can rally the girls together. And I think that's really important. And then from a libero standpoint, I mean, we don't even need to go on about it, but Lexi Rodriguez is the best libero in the country, in my opinion, hands down. I mean, your back row is absolutely covered there, so no question marks. From a setting standpoint, you have Kennedy Orr and you have freshman Bergen Riley coming in. Now, Bergen Riley is one of the most impressive incoming freshmen I think I've seen in a really long time. She's been in the USA gym for so many years now, played over the summer with them, has played at that elite level that I think not a lot of freshman setters come in with in those high pressure situations. Any game Nebraska is playing, doesn't matter if it's home or away, was going to be against a top team. The crowd's going to be rowdy and they could get in your head. But this is a player that had played in those high pressure environments. And not only that, but like, she's got hands like butter. Her defense is incredible. She just knows the game so well. So I would assume in the first month of season, they might test things out like they did last year. But if I had to guess, I would say Bergen Riley is probably going to take the reins. And we know Coach Cook loves freshman setters, get them in there early, have them for the next 4 years. So I would expect them to go to Bergen, but we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah. And you know that they could play well with freshmen. I'm really excited to see them. Okay. 2 more teams I want to kind of headline. Minnesota, they bring in Keegan Cook, comes in from Washington. You've got Kylie Murr now at libero, who was the 2022 Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. Taylor Landfair's back. They lose Jenna Wennis, but how do you think Minnesota performs? I mean, I believe we talked before the season and you were like, I kind of feel like Minnesota is going to be pretty good this year. I agree with that.
Yeah, I think they're going to be really good. The biggest question marks for them are in that middle position when you lose a Carter Booth. It can be difficult to replace. But other than that, I mean, they're completely stocked. You have Taylor Landfair on the outside, reigning Big Ten Player of the Year, was a National Player of the Year candidate, can totally just keep a team together and really run the show. You have Melanie Schaffmaster in her senior season. She's been an absolute rock star, has improved every single year. The speed that she runs the offense at, too, is just a testament to how good she is as a setter, getting the ball in the right position for her hitters. You had Kylie Murr at libero, and, from what they had last season, their back row was really the biggest issue for them. And that's a massive upgrade from a passing standpoint and defensive standpoint. And that other outside, I think McKenna Wooker, she was injured for a lot of the beginning of the season and she found her rhythm early on, but, they were moving pieces around and at times she was mostly on the outside, but sometimes on the right. And this is the year where I think she's really going to have a breakout season. She's an incredible, just firecracker on the outside. So I think they're in good hands, but from a blocking standpoint, that's kind of where my worries lie with, do you have 2 middles that can play at that elite Big Ten level?
Yeah, that's definitely the question mark. We're getting a lot of comments for talk about Pitt and Oregon. So let's go through both of those. Pitt is always so interesting to me, Emily. I mean, I feel like every year, not that I underestimate them, but you don't necessarily know what to expect. But they've made it to the national semifinals for the past 2 seasons. Like you've just, it comes to a point where it's like, you've got to give them credit. They bring back Rachel Fairbanks, who, is huge in the 6'2", Valeria Vasquez Gomez. So I don't know that feels like enough, but we were talking before, they bring in a big transfer. So what do you think?
Yeah, they're bringing in Brie Kelly from Florida, who I think is one of the most explosive, dynamic, athletic middles in the country. I don't think she got enough recognition for what she did at Florida last year, but bringing her is a really big step up. Now, you lose a player like Serena Gray in the middle, of course, you're going to have to replace that. But I do think Brie Kelly can play at that level. And I think it was interesting when we saw her leave from Florida, leaving one of those top programs for another top program. But I think this team is in really good hands because they have Dan Fisher as a coach. I think a lot of people coming in to every single season are always doubting this Pitt team because frankly, they just don't have the history behind them where, you can look at a Nebraska team and say, oh, we know they're going to be good because it's Nebraska. Pitt doesn't necessarily have that history. So we've been surprised every year, but we shouldn't be because Dan Fisher's proven that he's such an incredible head coach. And even when you look at the pieces, say you're comparing a team personnel to personnel, position to position, you might always pick that other team in terms of position battles, but Dan Fisher makes his team greater than the sum of their parts. And that's something that I think not a lot of coaches can do, but he's become really, really good at. And this is not a Pitt team to sleep on.
Yeah. I mean, Courtney Bazzario, big player to replace as well, but they just always surprise me year after year. So, I mean, I'm not counting them out literally ever again. Just forget about it. Okay. So let's take a look at Oregon next. So obviously you've got Mimi Collier. Lose Brooke Nuneviller, which is a really big loss, not only offensively. She was an incredible passer, used to be a libero, could play everywhere. I mean, I don't know how they replace that. I think Mimi Collier is going to get a lot more looks, but at the same time, they did bring in Kara McGee from Baylor in the middle. So that's a big add.
Yeah, you can't replace a player like Brooke Nuneviller, I think, from many standpoints, from an offensive standpoint, passing, and then just leadership. She was such, she was the heart and soul of that team. So you can't replace her, but you have to find a way to, add something in that's going to be close to that. So they added Gabby Gonzalez from Ohio State. She really helped that team become what it is. She was there for 4 years. She's an incredible passer. She can put a ball down. I don't necessarily think, her play is at the level of Nunneveller. However, I think she's a really good add to this program that can complement Mimi Collier really well. You bring back your setter, Hannah Pukas. You have Carson Bacon in the middle. Kara McGee is really massive from Baylor. I mean, she was one of the best blockers in the country. So that's a really big step up for this Oregon team that I think really needs that defense up front from a blocking standpoint. So this is also not a team to sleep on. I think we'll see in the first few weeks of non-conference how good they are, but I wouldn't be surprised if they start knocking teams off left and right.
Yeah, they've got San Diego up pretty soon. It's not televised, which kind of stinks, but that'll be a good test early on, even though San Diego lost a lot of players. So a lot of comments, don't worry, everybody, we didn't forget about the SEC. So for me, I was totally torn between Florida and Kentucky for the 10th spot in my Power 10 rankings because, Florida, they've got a lot of key pieces. They obviously lost Merritt Beeson, but you got Alexis Stuckey. You've got Gabby Essex. Oh, wait, no. Yes, Gabby Essex. I'm getting all confused with teams here. This is a really good Florida team. And you've got Sophia Victoria. Then Kentucky, you've got Emma Grome. That was the SEC Player of the Year last year. They look really, I just couldn't decide. I kind of think it's a toss-up and going to be a battle for the top of the SEC this year.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like every year we have this conversation of, okay, Florida or Kentucky. And then we find out, at the end of the season, of course, who's really the better team. But they're always at the top of the SEC. They're always incredible. I think the key for them is bringing back their setters because Emma Grome, obviously incredible setter, as you mentioned, the best in the SEC. But then you have Alexis Stuckey, who started off as a freshman, having an absolutely baller season. Her volleyball IQ is just so high. And I think one of the things that makes this Florida team really scary is they run so much of that offense through the middle. And yes, you lose a middle like Bree Kelly, who moved on to play at Pitt, but you keep Gabby Essex, who again is so dynamic, so athletic. She really is always up and available. So I think keeping those pieces are huge. And you mentioned Sophia Victoria. I think she had an outstanding season last year, really stepping up. She's going to have to carry a much bigger load this year, but we'll find out really early on if she can handle that load and if she's able to take over matches like she needs to this year.
Absolutely. And then I just want to give a quick shout out as well. Auburn, they bring back pretty much their entire core. We've talked about it. They've got Akasha coming back. She's really good. And then Tennessee, they have Morgan Fingal, who was one of my, top players coming back this season to watch. She's got just insane numbers, but I keep forgetting that Tennessee did bring in Janisha Moore from Ohio State. So that is a pretty big add of experience.
Yeah, I think it's big too for a Tennessee team that is really trying to push and, try to get that SEC title and really move up in the ranks, go deeper in the tournament. I think adding a player like Janisha Moore is really big for them because she brings so much experience and not just experience in terms of playing, but like that postseason experience too. Right. Now, Ohio State's been going further and further every single year. And while she might not have gotten the start every single game, anytime they pulled her off the bench, she was an absolute baller. So, she's that player that I think can really be a massive piece to that program and potentially get them to that next level. But again, we talk about an Auburn team that pretty much brings everyone back. And then a Florida and Kentucky, it's going to be hard for Tennessee to, keep pushing up, but I think they can do it. And they have the pieces. You mentioned Fingal. I mean, just an incredible player. So we'll see how all those pieces come together. But again, like every year, the SEC is kind of a toss up and we're always surprised by so many different teams that, just come out of the woodwork and are incredible, like we saw with Auburn last season.
Absolutely. Okay, so talking about, I mentioned San Diego earlier that they made it to the national semifinals last year as a complete wild card. I mean, if you would have asked us in the beginning of the season, I mean, we knew Gabby Blossom was coming in. We were excited about that, but I don't know that you would have thought that they would have been as good as they were. So they were able to bring in a lot of transfers and build up their team into a national caliber team, and it worked. They proved it. Jen Petrie won Coach of the Year. Yeah. I don't know that we have something like that this season. So when I think about under the radar teams, I don't know that anyone can do what San Diego did, but I still want to talk about under the radar teams. I mean, who has your attention?
Yeah, I think, to the first point with San Diego, it's an interesting situation because last season, they're a non-power 5 team that brought in a lot of power 5 incredible transfers, and
Right.
there was no doubt in my mind that Jen Petrie was going to win coach of the year because of what she did, and not only bring in those players but have them play at a high level and eventually get to the Final Four, for the first time. I don't think there's a non-power 5 team in my opinion that would be able to do that this season. But of course, teams can surprise you and we'll see. But in terms of under the radar teams, I think we already talked about Auburn a little bit, but bringing back pretty much every piece that they did last season, they're definitely a team to watch that I think could make some splashes. Their matchups against Florida and Kentucky, I think they're going to put up a really good fight, if not potentially win those if they're playing absolutely lights out. The other team that I'm really high on right now is Indiana. I think last season we saw them make big strides. We saw them take down Ohio State at the end of the season, and that wasn't just by chance. They have a core put together. I think they have one of the most athletic setters in the country. I think this team brings back every single person from last season, minus their libero, who they're bringing in a really good freshman from Munciana. But this is a team that brings back everyone. They dealt with injuries all last season. I think this year, if they can stay healthy, I think they're going to surprise a lot of teams in the Big Ten.
I want to add a few more to this list. So I think that we should look out for Houston this year. I mean, they made it to the tournament last year as a 5 seed, I believe. They had Nina Mbanu transfer in from Louisville, who, if you remember, was a huge piece in stepping up for Anna DeBeer when she was out with that knee injury. So she's going to bring that top caliber level of experience into Houston. They've got a really good libero too. I mean, everybody probably remembers Katie Georgitis in the national in the NCAA tournament. I really like Marquette's not really under the radar, but I think we should watch out for them this year. Washington State as well, number 21 coming in. But you're talking about players like Pia Timmer and Magda Halajrova, and I think you've got a chance. So they've got Louisville to start the season, so I'm excited for that matchup. But those were a few I wanted to mention. Hawaii too. I mean, Amber Ajayi. So those are a few. Okay.
Yeah, definitely under the radar teams. And, of course, when you're talking about teams that aren't necessarily, and, I guess with Houston and even a UCF, joining conference realignment and all of that, it's definitely interesting to see how these teams will really do playing higher level teams on that standpoint. So can they sustain that success that they had? I think that's my biggest question for a lot of those teams.
Absolutely. Okay. We're going to talk players later because we're going to do a fun snake draft, and that will be our way of talking about national players, contenders. But you mentioned Kendall Kipp. Who are your other contenders?
I think Kendall Kipp would be my number one right now. I think a lot of these outsides are a toss-up for me. I think Taylor Landfair potentially has the best chance of doing it. Playing in the Big Ten, I think that kind of gives you a level up if you're dominating. So I would pick Taylor Landfair up there. I wouldn't be surprised to see Mimi Collier in the conversation for Oregon. Now that she's not going to be splitting the reps with someone like Brooke Nunneveller, I think they're going to feed her a lot of balls. And I could definitely see her in that conversation. And then someone that, I had the chance to watch over the summer a lot, but Texas middle, Asia O'Neal. I think she is the best middle in the country. I think she's one of the best players in the country. Her ability to put balls down as well as get stuffs and be so cool, calm, and collected the whole time is something I don't think I've seen from a player in a really long time. And watching her over the summer playing with Team USA against the best players in the world, she was just like steady Eddie the entire time. And I think that's going to pay dividends for this Texas team that I think really needs her to step up in that way. So yeah, I would say Kendall Kipp, Taylor Landfair, Asia O'Neal are probably my top 3 at this point.
Yeah. The thing, I mean, we haven't had a middle. Well, we had Dana Redkey win as a middle. That's probably one of the only ones. So
yeah,
if there wasn't a player like Kendall Kipp, I feel like Asia would have a really great chance. There's also, I hate that, Skylar Fields puts up player of the year numbers. It's just not at the level that she's bringing her team, a USC, to the national semifinals. And that makes a difference,
Yeah, I think part of it is definitely how far can you get your team. Of course, we have, I think of like a McKenna Melville at UCF, and of course, the numbers she's putting up are insane, but also that's not a UCF team that would make the Final Four. So yeah, you could put them in that conversation, but at the end of the day, I think it does say a lot if you can lead your team further and further down into the year, into the tournament. And yeah, I'm not sure Skylar Fields in this USC team will be there. We'll see how they do, but she's definitely someone that should be in the conversation, at least from, what she showed last year.
Yeah, gosh, I think she was in the top 5 in the NCAA with over 5.5 points per set. Just crazy. Let's talk some storylines. So I broke down my top storylines. We've all been talking, the mainstream ones, conference realignment, the attendance record being broken, big faces, new places. Do you have any like non-mainstream storylines that we should watch out for?
I think, I think the conference realignment is a big one for me, just because you have, I don't want to say historic programs, but top programs that are now joining historic conferences. And, I look at the Big 12, and you obviously have Baylor and Texas at the top, and then it's kind of a crapshoot for who's going to be, up there with the rest of them. Is it a UCF? Can they do it? Is BYU? They're always incredible. Could Houston sneak in there? I don't know. I think for me, that's going to be really interesting to watch and play out, mostly because the Big 12 could get so many teams in the NCAA tournament, which of course, takes away from other conferences. And it'll be interesting to see what happens there, mostly in terms of the postseason and how that plays out. Secondly, I just love watching the SEC. I think it's fun. There's so many middle of the pack teams that surprise me every single weekend. And I think that'll be really fun to watch, watch a team like Georgia. Of course, I mentioned Auburn so many times now, but to see how they do, we'll see. The ACC also at the same time, how do some of those teams in the middle of the pack factor in? Are they going to finally take the step up, or is it just going to be, Louisville, Pitt, Georgia Tech probably taking a step back with Julia Bergman out? Those are things that I'm looking at. And then you, of course, mentioned attendance record. Like, I think to me, that's the biggest storyline, at least of the non-conference. I know we're both going to be there in Nebraska, and it's just like thinking about it gives me chills. I'm so excited for not just volleyball, not just for Nebraska, but just like women's sports in general. Like women's sports, we don't get this, and now we're packing people into a stadium, and the potential to have it be the largest gathering of a U.S. women's sporting event in history. Like, of course, Nebraska is going to be the place to do it because those fans are just absolutely insane. And it's going to be a fun time. I've been on weather watch for the last 2 weeks. So
me too.
We'll see. I'm
fingers crossed it can happen.
I can deal with 90. I can deal with 90 and sunny, but don't give me 70 and raining. We can't do that.
No rain, no high winds. I'm so excited. Me and Emily are both going to be there. Emily's going to be calling that game. So really excited for that. I just can't even imagine what that's going to feel like and look like. So I just can't wait to be a part of it. It's just insane. And
these big events get me so emotional too. And, I know I have a job to do, gotta be on TV, gotta call the game, but I don't know how I'm not going to cry seeing all these people.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if they're doing a flyover or whatever, but how am I supposed to keep my composure? I'm worried about myself here.
Got to pull it together, Emily. I'll be there for moral support. We'll figure it out. But just great. We're not going to have to wait long for great matches either. So let's do some predictions for top matchups. So I'm going to start with opening night, Tampa, which is the exact arena where the championship's going to be. We have Florida and Penn State. I'm excited for this one because we'll get to see that new look Penn State with Jess Merzick and Mac Pedraza. But who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm going to take Penn State in this one. I think that's a team that we haven't necessarily touched on yet, and a team that I think could be in contention for a Big Ten title. I mean, you bring in one of the best setters in the country with Mac Pedraza from Ohio State. You bring in Michigan's Jess Merzick, who can put a ball down at any given time and is one of the best passers, outside passers in the country. I think the biggest question mark for them is, can they gel well together right away? But just by sheer talent that this team has, I'm probably going to take them over Florida. But, from what we saw last season, Florida surprised Wisconsin in the non-con. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that game going all the way.
Yeah, I think Penn State is a team that we're going to see get better and better, as the season goes on. And I'm just really excited to see it all come together. This is definitely the team that got the biggest facelift.
Yeah.
So I just think it's going to be great. I mean, Mac Pedraza can really run an offense beautifully, and she was able to take Ohio State to really big levels. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what she does with Penn State, a program that is historically, Penn State. So,
Yeah.
but off for the past few years. Okay, let's look at a few more matchups. Some that really stand out to me is Stanford just has a gauntlet.
Stanford's playing everyone. Like, I mean, I know Hamley does it every year, but like, I'm looking at the numbers.
Come on.
My God, these are so great.
I was looking at it and I was like, okay, how many top 5 matchups do we have in the non-conference schedule? We've got 3. Stanford's in all of them. So Stanford, Texas, Stanford, Louisville, and Stanford, Nebraska. Is that the 3?
Yep.
So should we pick them? I mean, who do we got? Stanford, Texas. I think I'm going to go with Stanford in this one. I think that they're just going to, come in. It might be a good match. It could be a 5-setter, but I'm going to go with the Cardinal.
Yeah, I'm going to go with them sheerly because honestly, I'm going to pick Stanford in all these matchups, mostly because yes, again, I do think they're the best team. However, I think, a lot of these other teams have a lot to figure out. So like at Texas, again, they have to figure out what they're going to do with their lineup. I think they have a set lineup, but how do those pieces play well together? Like if Stanford and Texas played for a national championship, in December, my answer might be different. But at this point in the season, that experience and that comfortability and consistency really matters. And that's where Stanford has, I think, the leg up on all of these teams. I will say if there's a team that's going to push them, honestly, I might go with Louisville just because I think at this point it feels like they play Louisville, correct?
Yep, they do.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
They've got Nebraska, Louisville, and Texas.
Yeah, I think the Louisville one is scary to me for them because I know they're top 5, but I still feel like they think they have something to prove losing these players. And I could see them just going all out and just ripping some balls. And we'll see how Stanford's defense kind of holds up against that. But I don't know. They're all going to be fun. Anytime you get a top 5 matchup, especially when they're on TV, they're the most fun thing in non-con. And that's what's made the last few years so fun because the parodies just been so incredible. And we get so many televised matches, which makes my heart happy.
Yeah. And to think about, Stanford, Nebraska, that's just like this unspoken rivalry for the past 10 years. That is just, now that these two programs are just back to the very top, I'm so excited to get that matchup again in the same caliber that it was in 2019, and then Stanford's going to be in the Greg, I believe, for Texas. So that should be really crazy. Let's look at some other non-conference matchups. You look at Pitt. Who's Pitt playing? They've got Oregon.
I think these are two teams that, again, I don't want to say they have to prove themselves because you're a top 10 team. Like you don't necessarily have to prove yourself. However, I do think they have a lot to figure out with the pieces that they lost and the pieces that they gained and how well they work together. I'm going to go with Oregon on this one. I really am excited to see this offense kind of come alive. And I think Pitt from that standpoint has a little bit more to figure out in terms of replacing pieces. Whereas I think Oregon has a few more staples that are consistent from that front.
They definitely do. But I did make a comment that I'm never doubting Pitt again.
So there we go.
So I'm just going to go with Pitt just for the sake of that, just to make things interesting. Okay, a few more. Minnesota has some good ones. They've got Texas. Let's actually, before I get to that, let's talk about the in-state battles. So you've got Louisville, Kentucky, Nebraska, Creighton, and Wisconsin, Marquette. I know it seems like you obviously want to pick Louisville, Wisconsin, Nebraska, but these were good matchups last year, if you remember.
Yeah, I think back to last year, and let's take, for example, Nebraska Creighton. I think Nebraska last non-con had a lot to figure out. They were changing their lineups left and right.
True.
I could see the exact same thing happening this year. They might not have a set lineup by the time they play. And how does that factor in to this Creighton team that every single year is just absolutely going to bring it? So I don't know. I mean, my gut tells me to go with Nebraska, to go with Wisconsin. I think the Louisville, Kentucky one, I think will be really interesting because that's a matchup that I think we all always have circled on our calendars. And it's going the mile. I think that's a matchup where we know we're going to get our money's worth. It'll be interesting to see kind of how Louisville has fit into their system and what's going on there. But I'm so excited for these non-con games. Every year they get bigger. Every year they get better. Every year we have more on TV. And it's been so fun.
So good. And I know I want to pick Wisconsin against Marquette, but I just really am excited to see Marquette compete this year with Aubrey Hamilton, Carly Scraw back as libero. I just think they might be pretty solid. And I'm excited to see them compete. Okay, we'll end it with this. It's always fun. I know it's early. We're not going to really have freshmen in the mix yet, but let's do our typical snake draft. So
I'm getting out my pen and paper.
Me too. So for those who maybe haven't seen our season previews or Instagram lives before, we do some snake drafts and we basically draft an all-star team. So we're gonna pick 2 outsides, a right side, 2 middle blockers, libero, setter, and then we'll basically have these 2 all-star teams that I wish could compete in real life, but maybe we'll make that happen one day. All right. So since you're the guest, Emily, do you want the first pick or do you want the double second pick?
I'll take the double second pick.
Okay. You're giving me the first pick in the draft. Okay. If that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and pick my right side and I'm going to take Kendall Kipp. I just think she can dominate any game and just give my team a chance to win no matter what. So if I got the first pick, I'm going with Kendall Kipp.
Yeah, and that's very fair. I'm going to go with her setter, and I'm going to go with Cami Minor because I think that is the most important position to have because you cannot win without an elite setter. So I'm taking Cami Minor, and then here's the thing: I want to go with an outside, but I think there's so many good outsides that I don't want to pick one yet. So I'm going to go Asia O'Neal because I think I'm going to have a good defense.
Okay. Is this like, fantasy draft where you don't want to be the first person to take a quarterback? Like, I don't want to be the first person to take an outside. Okay. So I guess I'll go setter next as well. I could go Pedraza or Grome. I think I'm going to take Emma Grome here.
Okay. Great pick.
And then I've got another one here. So let's go. I'm going to take Lexi Rodriguez.
That was going to be my pick.
Sorry about it.
All right. Well, I will then hold I got to think strategically here. All right. I'm going outsides. I get 2 picks, correct?
Correct.
All right. Give me Landfair and give me.
Don't do it.
I think I want DeBeer.
DeBeer. Okay.
Yeah, I want a good passer because Landfair is going to be my terminal outside, and then I want DeBeer to be my passing outside. I don't know.
Okay, that was probably smart.
I was going between a few. I don't want to give you names, but there's a few other names that I probably would pick, but I kind of I just want a feisty baller, and that's what I give it to DeBeer.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take Ilera then as an outside, just so that I get that big arm, power, all of the above. Let's take Ilera, and then for my second pick here, I think I might take a middle off the board since you already did that. And you're already done with outside, so I don't have competition there. I'm gonna take I'll go Carter Booth.
Okay. I will round out my middles with Kara McGee.
Okay.
Because again, I'm gonna have the best defense in the country, Michaela. And then I'm down to a right side in libero, so doesn't necessarily matter. You already picked yours. My right side, give me Devin Robinson.
It's a good pick. I love Devin Robinson.
I want a good blocker. I'm building up my defense here.
You are. Okay, I've got one more middle to go and an outside. So I've got Carter Booth, so I'm gonna go with, let's see, between Magda and Amber Igidi here.
Mm,
I'm gonna go Magda because she's
yeah.
got just some more experience against some
I
really,
think too, like just so physical. Like up
yeah,
front, if I'm up against her, I'm running the other way. Like she's just
yeah.
dominant. She's physical. She's aggressive. I think that's and you got
She hit.
two physical middles on your team with Carter Booth and her.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's what I'm going for here. She hit 389 last season too. 176 blocks. So going with her, and then I'll finish out my outside. I'm gonna take Mimi Collier.
Ooh, I thought I was between Skinner or
Yeah,
Fields, but I would have picked Collier too from a passing standpoint.
yeah. Well, I got Temi as my other outside, so I
Yeah.
kind of wanted a better passer there. So there we go. There's our teams.
Wait, I got a libero. It's Kylie
A
Murr.
libero.
I got Kylie Murr.
You going Kylie Murr? Okay, good choice. That's a good choice after Lexi Rod.
I feel good
Okay,
about this.
so let's keep these.
You got a physical
Maybe
team.
we'll. I do have a physical team here.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've got
Rhea
Kendall Kipp and Ilera. You've got some really good
and
defense though.
yeah, your middles kind of scare me, but I'll take shorter finesse over that.
Okay, let's tweet these out and see what
Yeah,
everybody
let's
has to
see.
say. Who who
Who
we've
who do
got
we
winning?
miss?
All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining, Emily. It's a pleasure as always. I think we've got a great season in store, and we'll do more of these. So thanks for coming in and providing all your insight. It's always so much fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'll see you in Lincoln next week.
See you in Lincoln next week. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Bye guys.
There goes an AirPod. All right, bye everybody.